Welcome to today's webinar. We are going to wait a couple moments for some more folks to join us, and then we can get started. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on the state of ePayables 2024 with Ardent Partners. My name is Allie Lim, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. We do have a few housekeeping items to take care of before we begin. Please note that you have joined the presentation using your computer speakers by default. If you prefer to call in, select telephone in the audio pan and the dial-in information will be displayed. The screenshot shows what your webinar interface looks like, which you'll see in the upper right corner of your screen. You can submit questions anytime during the webinar via the question pane on the control panel, and we will address those questions during the Q&A at the end. And this webinar will be recorded. All attendees will receive an email with the recording link after today's session. And the agenda today, we will be going through the intro to Corcentric and Ardent Partners, and then we will get into the state of AP, touching on payment fraud. We'll then discuss the state of ePayables findings and transition into what best-in-class AP looks like. Then we'll end with the Q&A. So, our speakers today, we have Andrew Bartolini, who is the founder and chief research officer at Ardent Partners. We also have Robert Johnson, who is the senior vice president of payments with Corcentric. So welcome, Robert and Andrew.
Thanks, Allie.
Hi, Allie. Thanks for having us today.
So a little bit about Corcentric. We were founded over 20 years ago. We are a leading provider of financial process automation solutions. We move around 250 billion in spend annually across 22 million transactions globally, connecting over 500,000 buyers and suppliers across our solution. We help clients purchase, pay, and get paid. Purchasing solutions such as sourcing type solutions, contract management type solutions, pay. Andrew, if you don't mind going to the next slide, pay, invoice automation solutions, or payment solutions. Getting paid is where we help facilitate the delivery of invoices, as well as provide accounts receivable type solutions. We do that through technology, managed services, and with a financing component where we sit in the middle of the transaction. And we really focus on business outcomes such as DPO extension or DSO reduction.
Great. Well, thanks, Robert. Right. So, hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Bartolini. Just real quick about Ardent Partners, right? So the firm that I founded back in 2010, right? So for the past 15 years, we have been laser focused on the source to pay process. We do a bunch of different types of research, right? We do market research. Today's presentation is a great example of that. We also analyze technology markets, broad range of things. I invite you to visit ardentpartners.com for more information about the things that we do. And also, if you find today's presentation interesting, invite you to visit payablesplace.com. That's our site that focuses on what's happening in the world of accounts payable. But let's dive in, right? So today's presentation, right, is based upon a report that published a little bit earlier this year called The State of ePayables 2024, Money Never Sleeps. And every time I present data, we like to share the demographics so that you can understand the context of the data and how closely it maps to your organization. Right, what you can see is that more than 200 leaders responded to and took about a 30-question survey online. We did do some follow-up interviews as well to add some color to the data that we captured. People coming primarily from AP, finance, and procurement. Very senior audience, right? Particularly for the AP side. The data is reflective of all different company sizes. The data does tilt towards the large enterprise, and then we do draw globally, but the data does tilt towards North America. So anyway, let's dive in, right? So if you can think about where you were, 18, 19 years ago, I was working on the first version of this report, if you can believe that, right? So I've spent almost 20 years, dedicated to researching the AP space. And, what I can tell you is that, amidst high inflation, supply chain challenges, and global disorder, managing money and relationships, have never been more important to a business, and really in just a few short years, right? So we're in a very different world if you're working in AP today than we were almost 20 years ago, because AP has emerged as a critical component in the areas of managing money and relationships, right? Particularly supplier relationships. It's become a major cog in the cash management machine and a key player in managing trading partner relationships. Now, when we were heading into this year and looking out over the next 24 months, almost 70% of the respondents felt like that this was going to be a more challenging 12 months coming ahead than what they just experienced, and about 40% saw great uncertainty in the market. I can tell you that what is certain is that AP's impact on operations and results are going to continue to rise. So let's look at the state of AP in 2024. Right, so AP, well, first off, right, so the state of accounts payable is strong, right? Perhaps as strong as it's ever been, with rising awareness of the function and an increasing impact from the function. But there's still work to be done. A business function from our perspective, can't claim to be truly strategic if you're operating without a plan, right? So as much as we want to say that AP has become more strategic, there's still a lot of organizations that have some work to do, right? You can look at this chart and it shows the percentage of AP organizations that are operating with a strategic plan. That's 36% are doing it with a multi-year plan, 37% have an annual plan, right? That's great. That's It's almost 3/4 of AP organizations, working with a strategic plan. Another quarter, not so great. It's excellent news, from where we were, right? Again, I mean, as I think about, my time, working, doing research in AP, I've actually worked in the profession almost 25 years, right? There's never been a better time to be working in accounts payable than right now. I think what is interesting, what is interesting also, and indications of that, and I'll call those out along the way, that AP is becoming more strategic. One is the data that we see here, but now we have almost 40% of CFOs that are signing off on the annual plan of AP, right? That's something that we wouldn't have seen, maybe even 10 years ago. And what's also great is, it's important to have a plan. But it's also important that the plan maps to the things that are most important to your executive leadership, to your CFO, and to the business as a whole. And the full 40% are well aligned with enterprise objectives. How strategic is AP? Part 2, right? The greater disconnect with the AP strategic plan is reviewing and discussing it with AP staff, right? Only 36, as you can see here, right? Only 36% of respondents report that the strategic plan is communicated to those who must execute it, right? So if you have the plan, you have to close the loop. You have to bring, the staff, get them involved, get their buy-in, give them some ownership as well. Because if you don't, it poses substantial challenges because it creates misalignment, right, in day-to-day activities and in big picture metrics. It also has implications for AP leaders and their ability to reach strategic targets, right? When everybody's rowing in the same direction, right, you go faster, you go in a straight line. AP is a team sport with several moving parts in the system that require communication, collaboration, and execution to deliver. Right, and so as we see there, the 37% point, I think it's great that we have about half of organizations with clear performance targets. We want to make sure that those targets also start to trickle down to staff, right? And how do you incentivize your staff is important in getting them to focus on the things that are most important to the AP organization, and linking what's important to the AP organization should be the fundamental strategic objectives of the larger enterprise. So, AP is in some places a strategic business function. It is becoming a strategic business function in many more. Now you've got to go out and really own it. Right. So, AP's perception in 2024. Right. I talk about the view and the transformation that AP has had over the past 20-25 years. We see it here in the data very directly, right? AP is a value driver, right? And a value driver is a factor that increases the worth of an asset, function, process, outcome, or business, right? And what we see here is that AP is viewed by 60% as a key value driver for the overall enterprise, right? This reinforces our view that AP, can and should be a hub of intelligence and efficiency. The trend line has been up and to the right. And so, let's look now at some of AP's current capabilities, right? And so, I often look at a chart like this, and I have tended over the years to take the glasses half full view, right? When you look at things like the ability to process invoices straight through, or the ability to measure key metrics, right? Those should be table stakes for a strategic AP operation, and yet, less than half have those capabilities today, right? So, the trend line is moving steadily up and to the right, but there's still a lot of work to be done at the average AP organization, right? Gaining full automation, as we'll talk about, mastering that technology, really streamlining operations and getting better alignment with the business. Robert, let me pull you in, right? So you've worked in the space a long time as well. When you look at a chart like this, what jumps out?
Well, I like the high percentage of electronic payments. And what I worry about often is, the fraud and risk related to AP and electronic payments is increased versus a paper check. Are companies, as they move to electronic payments, really taking a hard look at their internal controls to make sure that as they increase electronic payments, that they're increasing or reviewing or changing their internal controls to make sure they're not more at risk to fraud as a result of that? And and then I look at the invoices, right? When invoices aren't going straight through, that means they're being touched, and there's more risk of fraud as well. So fraud is something that I'm looking at here, just wondering, are companies doing what they should be doing when they increase to electronic payments, and really taking a hard look at their internal controls to minimize that risk?
Right. I mean, I think you hit upon a great point, right? And one of the major themes of this year's study was the importance of cash management, right? In a world where there's a significantly higher cost of capital for almost every company that's out there versus 5 years ago, certainly, even 3 years ago. How you manage your payments, how you're managing your invoices has a bottom line impact. But since the pandemic, our research has shown, and many others who track more globally, the spike in fraud activity and attempted fraud activity, really is off the charts. So again, sort of emphasize the thing, AP becoming more strategic, but a lot of work still to do, right? Particularly, if you're not possessing what we would think of as core capabilities today. Now, in the world of AP, right, the phrase "money never sleeps," it's a literal fact, right? The more time it takes a department to approve invoices and payments, the more money it costs them to do so. And while AP's perceived value continues to increase, it's a dirty little secret that a majority of AP teams are dealing with classic challenges, right? And these go back, if I pulled out the data from 20 years ago, right, what would we see here? Slow processing times, high processing costs. This year, right, invoice exceptions, becomes the top challenge, and that's a shift from things that we've seen, in general over the long arc of the research that we've performed. But Robert, I mean, you see here again, fraud, really front and center, exceptions front and center, and really a lack of efficiency and process productivity.
Yeah, I just see a direct correlation with the high percentage of exceptions and the fraud risk, right? As if companies can, work to get a higher STP and lower the percentage of exceptions, I think the fraud risk percentage goes down in the same way. If companies are able to process invoices and payments straight through, the risk of fraud is drastically reduced.
I think absolutely right. I mean, departments that lack a clear solution to greatly reduce exceptions, inevitably hit a performance ceiling much sooner than their peers. Resolving these, when resolving these exceptions requires manual intervention, right? It consumes a lot of your time and resources that could be allocated to more strategic activities, right? And it does open up again, that window for fraud. So priorities and focus, right? So what are AP leaders focused on this year, right? Over the years, many groups that automated some or part or all of the invoice and payment processing operations have experienced positive results, right? Process efficiencies, cost savings, better cash management, faster invoice and payment approval times. Others have been able to translate automation into improved working capital, better spend management, improved supplier relationships, better compliance, as well as reduced fraud. Over the last decade, right, these benefits have really shifted from nice to have to must have. And yet, many AP departments still have large technology gaps, right? As you see here, AP automation, improving reporting, and enabling more suppliers to submit electronic invoices are top priorities for AP leaders this year, right? Only after you've automated your AP processes, and the function's able to focus on handling exceptions and not every invoice, can it begin to move up the value chain and focus on the more strategic aspects of the operation. right? So what are those, right? So that's like data gathering, data analysis, dissemination of that data, right? As a part of that, you know, with that key information going out to Treasury on the cash management side, with that key information going out to procurement on the sourcing and cost saving side, you know, your ability to capture that data is only possible with automation tools, right? You know, meanwhile, the drive to improve overall reporting and analytics in the months ahead, you know, really is a representation of, you know, the function's general shift to something that is more strategic, right? It used to be that the priorities and focus were reducing processing costs and almost nothing else mattered. And so what we see here when we take this away is that, you know, AP is moving up the value chain. It's focusing on, you know, the bigger picture items that are going to drive value for a much longer period of time. Now, Robert has talked about fraud, right? The report focuses a fair amount on fraud because fraud is growing, right? You know, I think that, you know, the entire P2P journey, right, from procure to pay, is susceptible to various forms of fraudulent activities, right? It's invoice manipulation, fictitious vendor schemes, unauthorized access to payment channels. You know, investing in robust fraud prevention technology, right, which starts with your core P2P or AP automation solution, you know, is critical to help safeguard against financial losses while helping to maintain the integrity of the entire P2P ecosystem. Right, over the past few years, criminal fraudsters took advantage of critical process and technology vulnerabilities, as well as the work from home initiatives that had, you know, a distributed workforce. You know, we found that, you know, as you see here, you know, 37% of businesses reported, oh, actually 34% of businesses reported a business fraud attack over the past year. And, you know, 37% of AP teams said fraud attacks increased, while 36% were unable to answer that with any level of authority, right? So there's a big gap in knowledge, right? You know, if you know, there are many organizations that aren't even aware of those fraud attacks. And, you know, when we look at B2B fraud and its expansion, right, you know, it really, you know, does extend beyond classic P2P attacks, right? It's payroll, it's cards, you know, it's taking over accounts. It's, you know, it's business identity theft, right? It's not, it's, you know, we're all, you know, have to be on guard and guarded about our own personal information, but businesses as well. I mean, you know, the list is actually longer than this, but, you know, in the P2P context, right, you know, where do you start? How do you think about this? You know, Robert, you've got some great slides here. Let me pull you in and have you guide us through some examples and use cases.
Yeah, these are fun examples just to, you know, show people what we see on a daily basis with our solutions. We have an example here of where, you know, somebody sent in an email to update a bank account, and the email looks legit, right? It's from multiview.com, and, you know, you get this email and you go into your ERP system, you update the bank account, and all of a sudden, you know, funds get misdirected and they go to the bad guys. So it's super important that internal controls are followed whenever there's, you know, requests like this coming into your organization. You can see here that the only difference between a legit email from multiview.com and a fraud email is the L was changed to a 1. So very hard to, you know, pick up and see with the naked eye that L is actually a 1. So what happened is, in this case, our stop fraud offering protected this payment, and what happened was our team reached out to the supplier to validate if this change was valid, and found out that it wasn't valid. It wasn't from the actual supplier, so we were able to stop it in its tracks. But this is very common. We get these types of emails on a daily basis, and I thought it'd be fun to show kind of a real life example.
That's great.
And here's another one. So here's one where when we talked to the organization, the IT team indicated that their email got hacked, and there were several hundred emails that went out to their customers asking to update bank account information. So same scenario here. They asked for, you know, us to update the bank account information. Our stop fraud solution caught this. We called the supplier to validate if that change was valid, and they said it wasn't. So this happens all the time. Email can get compromised. The bad guys get a hold of email addresses, send out a mass email, and just hope that somebody processes this change. It usually comes with urgency and they're trying to get accounts payable staff to not follow certain controls that they have in place to process something quickly. So it's super important when you get change requests like this that you follow your process. You work with a partner that has a solution to protect you from these types of requests, and that you follow your controls, even if the email is putting pressure or somebody's calling to make a similar request and applying pressure to get it done quickly. It's super important to still follow your existing process and controls. And here's just kind of a snapshot of the stop fraud service that I was mentioning. These are some of the controls that we have to stop fraud attempts in their tracks. So we have physical callbacks, very important, right? You get an email request to make a change. Calling back the supplier to validate that change was valid is a really key step. And it's manual, right? It's not easy to do. And if you're a big organization and you have a lot of change requests coming in, it's going to require your staff to make calls, and they may not be able to get a hold of people on the first attempt. But speed is not the solution here. It's to make sure that the controls are followed. So even if it takes a couple of calls to get a hold of somebody, that's super critical to make sure that you follow those steps to validate that those changes were valid. Because once the updated instructions, the bad instructions get updated in your platform, then funds get misdirected, and they're often very difficult or impossible to get back.
Yeah, no, this is great, right? I mean, so again, right? I mean, these are just two of the myriad examples that you've shown there, and again, really highlights the importance of having something like stop fraud, as a major block, right? I mean, we all manage and navigate, I personally probably manage a couple hundred emails a day, and you take your eye off the ball for 1 second, and all of a sudden you find yourself starting to do something that just through sort of rote activity, and can get yourself and your organization in a lot of trouble, right? If you don't have the checks and balances, if you don't have the technology, because the fraudsters are always going to be one step ahead, of certainly of manual. They're going to be multiple steps ahead of manual organizations, right? So you need tools and solutions and strategies and awareness, right? It's a combination of those things. And so, we've talked about the state of AP. It's evolving, it's growing, it is, AP is rising, right, as we like to say. But now let's take a look at the state of ePayables, right? And this is, ePayables is our term for the solutions that automate, some or the entire, part of the invoice and payment processes. In today's rapidly evolving business landscape, the acceleration of technology is reshaping every aspect of organizational operations. AP is no exception, right? Smart executives know that deploying innovative technology solutions in tandem with transformative strategies is key to optimizing processes, capabilities, and results. Right, we've moved, really far beyond the point of, whether an AP digital transformation is possible. It's really a matter of, how forcefully do you attack the opportunity? How well do you go through the process of identifying the right solutions, and then working to not only drive usage, but to drive mastery, so that you can pave a way towards a smarter future with better results, right? The AP automation marketplace, right, ePayables, right, really has undergone a wave of innovation, right? We're going to talk about AI at the end. I mean, this is really not only the best time to be working in AP, it's really one of the most exciting periods to be working in business from a technology standpoint. So let's dive into technology in this realm, right? And so, again, I've mentioned, a couple times, this is, the 19th time that we put a survey out focused on the state of ePayables. What we can see here is that electronic invoices and electronic payments, have a majority of the marketplace. in overall volume, right? It's great news for AP staffers and stakeholders because our research shows that the primary obstacles to reducing processing costs, right, and improving AP performance, right, the challenges with exceptions, right, the issues around fraud, are not, completely pushed aside, but they are greatly lessened, by significant and very important margins when you move to an automated environment, right? When you're receiving invoices with mail, fax, PDF, email attachments, and when you're cutting, paper-based checks, right? You're not efficient, right? I mean, everybody knows that, and yet, we still see a lot of yellow here on the chart. You see electronic invoices, account for, 51.2% of all invoices received by the average enterprise, right? It's only been maybe 3 years where we're seeing more electronic invoices on average at an enterprise, at a business, than paper. E-payments have had, certainly have had some momentum recently, but they're now approaching 70%. Paper checks, still in the market, right? But they are being replaced by ACH and payment networks and commercial cards and virtual cards and wire transfers too, and these other types of sort of emerging payment capabilities, right? The tokenization, we'll see where that goes. We'll see if crypto does start to enter the B2B parlance over the next couple of years, but again, things are moving up and to the right. In this case, they're moving a little bit slower than I might otherwise have hoped. So let's talk about technology adoption, right? So what we have in this chart, is on the left, the list of the different applications, the primary applications that drive an AP department, right? These are the technologies, and then shown in green are the percentage of enterprises, the percentage of companies that have these solutions in place today, followed in the blue with those that plan to deploy them over the next 2 years. And again, taking the glass is half full, these numbers continue to move up, slightly each year. There is still a reliance on manual activity, on manual processes. I think one of the trends that we've seen is that newer, younger, smaller organizations are looking to fully automate from the start. And so, I mean, rather than just sort of, call out each of these solutions, right? The bigger picture context here is that, if you're working in a business environment that stresses efficiency and smart cash management, investments in these solutions have the clearest path to achieving those goals, right? Particularly e-payments and even invoicing. These two solutions, along with automated routing and approval solutions, have moved up the charts. But again, a long way to go. And one way to look at the level of, giving you a couple of different views, right? It just showed you the amount of paper in the market today, looking at the number or the percentage of solution usage in the market today. And now we sort of drill down and get to the company level, right? What level of automation do you have across each of these key process areas, right? You've got the solutions that automate, invoice and payment processing. They really can help transform your department into a sustainable center of excellence. When you replace manual tasks with repeatable processes, you're gaining value, right? You're gaining efficiencies, you're gaining value beyond cost savings, right? I mean, when we talk about the importance of data, and we've been talking about the importance of data within AP and within P2P and source to pay for a long time now. Automated AP teams can take advantage of early payment discounts. They're much better at mitigating fraud risk, and they achieve visibility into processes and into the data. Robert, right? So, we see a lot of green here. We see more blue here, and then, the purple represents, a fully manual part of the process. What catches your attention here? And you are
We're
on
talking
mute.
about exceptions today, and seeing just 5% of exceptions being fully automated doesn't really surprise me, right? It's hard to automate an exception process. So again, focusing on minimizing exceptions would naturally increase that because there'd be less exceptions to automate. And then the other thing that kind of sticks out for me is payment execution, right? We have a lot of migration to electronic payments, which we talked about in a previous slide. But to see that only 36% of a payment execution is fully automated, that means that that AP staff is keying in account information into payment systems to execute payments, and I'd really like to see that be more automated to minimize the risk of miskeying, misdirected funds.
Right. You still have a lot of staff time spent on highly tactical activities, right? And so, just go, if you look at exception management, right? So 65% have some level of automation, but this means that 35% of AP organizations are solving the same exceptions, doing the root cause analysis over and over and over again, and not understanding, the sort of Pareto effect that, 20% of the suppliers are responsible for 80% of those exceptions, right? It's a big miss. And again, on the tactical side, right? Particularly, we're operating in a world, of, in the Western world anyway, of historically low levels of unemployment, right? AP is not always top of the list when college grads are out looking for their first job, right? So AP has to be an interesting and exciting place. And if the job is manually intensive and you're dealing with paper, you're dealing with a new generation who have grown up with technology pervading all parts of their life. You want to be an attractive place for hiring and retaining your staff, right? One of the benefits of getting more green into charts like this within your organization. Big data by usage, right? We have talked a lot about becoming, how do you become a more intelligent AP operation? How do you become a more intelligent P2P operation? Starts with automation because that captures data, allows you to capture data and get smarter. This is going to become much more important when we look at how AI is entering the market today and what it's going to do over the next couple of years. But just as an example, to level set, right, there's a lot of organizations who say, oh, we're still struggling to do some of the basic things. How are we going to, simply move to become an intelligent operation? And so what I wanted to do was to show you how AP data is being used today to drive strategic decision making, right? A significant portion of survey professionals, acknowledge the utilization of data and intelligence, of data and intelligence around that data for forecasting, budgeting, and planning purposes, right? Almost 3/4. 66% of AP organizations now rely on data and intelligence to enhance their fraud detection and compliance management, right? I mean, these are big and important things, right? And so, the point in general here is that data can empower your organizations, right? It can empower your partners in treasury too, from a cash management standpoint, right? We really haven't talked too much about that. We're about to in a second. Supplier management as well, right? When you look at sort of critical operations that AP touches and can enhance, there's a lot of there's an extraordinary amount of value in the data that AP both processes and creates. And it's, if you're not capturing that, it's a missed opportunity, right? You're leaving money on the table today. This is only going to become a much bigger gap between your organization and other organizations as we start to look at how AI and more data-driven technologies are going to drive the AP profession forward over the next decade. Right, so top B2B payment strategies, still fairly basic, right? I think the point I would make in general is that what AP can and should be doing is working with the other part of finance, right? So if you're in a large enterprise, this is going to be the Treasury Department. If you're in a smaller organization, it's a controller, maybe it's your CFO. But with the rise of inflation over the past couple of years, central banks around the world have increased interest rates as a way to combat inflation. The result is there's a much higher borrowing cost for everyone in the market today than it was 3 or 4 years ago even. This means that how and when you pay your suppliers and on what platform has a greater impact on your bottom line than really at any other point over the past 10 years. Certainly maybe it's 15 years before we had interest rates at this level. So what are organizations doing, right? Paying invoices when they're due or when payments are late, top strategy. But only less than a third are looking at the least costly payment method. Only about a quarter are optimizing vendor payments, and that around that same number are extending payment terms with suppliers, right? It doesn't appear, so if you've only been working for the past 10 years or since the Great Recession, right, you're used to a business environment where these decisions don't really have a big impact, right? There's a low cost, in many cases almost no cost to capital in the decisions. That has changed in a pretty stark way, and we're not going to revert back to that low cost interest rate environment. And so you got to get smarter here. This is a huge opportunity for all AP organizations to become much more attuned to what's happening here and the decisions that are being made. And it's not, from our perspective, it's not AP's responsibility to make these decisions, but it's AP's responsibility to have the data to support the decisions that are being made. We look at top of B2B payment benefits. It's all the things that you would think about. It's efficiencies, it's productivity, it's smarter decision making, it's improved compliance. Again, when we look at the cost savings and the impact of optimizing your B2B payment strategy, right? I mean, the results can be very, very, very significant, right? The AP organization, in general, right? It does depend a little bit on what industry you're operating in, but in general, the AP organization, disperses, a very high percentage of your overall revenue. And to not be thinking about this as a strategic business function is a huge miss. Robert, I mean, this is your area of expertise, right? I mean, you're really driving this for Corcentric. What are you seeing as the benefits from Corcentric's customers, and what should they be doing here?
Well, yeah, I look at the slide and I just think that, the ability to reduce and prevent fraudulent payments being at 32% and, below cost savings or time savings, it's surprising. One fraud attempt could cost an organization, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars if, a payment gets misdirected. So, just really focusing on that, we've talked a lot about that today, but it's just so important in an AP organization to, have those controls in place. And that would result in cost savings and time savings because you're spending less time, worrying about fraud and more strategic things with an AP.
Yep. Well said. So let's look at some metrics, right? So within this report, and I'm sure that Corcentric will make this report available to everybody listening in today, we capture, key metrics that allow you to benchmark your performance relative to the average or typical AP operation today. And what we can see is that the average cost to process a single invoice, has fallen below $10. The average time it takes to process a single invoice, has fallen below 10 days, right? So good strides versus the numbers that were, in the mid 20s and in both cases about 20 years ago. The numbers continue to drop, but still remain high, relative to what we're going to see in the next few slides. Invoice exception rates, this is 1 in 7 invoices, is kicked out of the system, an exception. About a third of invoices are processed straight through. Again, rather than going through each of these, point by point, capture your own metrics, measure against what the typical AP department is doing in the marketplace today. How do you fare? Can you even measure these metrics, right, is really the starting point. If you can't, right, that's a red flag. And then compare how you're doing. Right, huge opportunities here for improvement, right? What gets measured gets done, what gets measured gets improved upon. Now we also, in this report, share some B2B payment metrics. We do also have an exciting, Pulse on B2B payments ebook that's coming out later this month that Corcentric will also have available for you. But some key metrics here, right? The average cost to process a supplier payment, a little bit less than $10. Things that jump out to me here, right, is that, obviously the market is growing. We're seeing an acceleration of more payments being made, electronic payments being made, and that, nearly 2/3, right, 65% of teams are involved in the cash management process, right? They should be. You're a vital component from a process standpoint and from an information standpoint. And we still have organizations that have no formal payment strategy, right? This is a huge miss. Robert, I'm pulling you back in here.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing on the 18% have no formal payment strategy. I see that increasing, this year and next year, given everything that we've talked about, right? Working capital is getting more expensive. Having a payment strategy that organizations have in place to make sure they're doing the least cost payment method routing, optimizing payment terms, all of those things are super critical as the cost of capital gets higher with the high interest rate. So I see that improving significantly, and we're seeing that in the market as well, is that companies are really taking a hard look at their payments as well as terms, right? Making sure that they have consistent terms across the organization, and they're not paying suppliers too soon, and they're managing their cash better.
I think this is AP's path to more strategic relevance within the organization, and within the finance department very specifically. So, follow up with us. Either one of us, I'm sure, would be happy to give you some ideas on how you engage the larger organization so that you can begin to add some real value to the bottom line. There's a real impact there. Now, we also in any Ardent Partners market research study, we will segment out the top performers, right? The top 20% in any research survey that we conduct. We identify those as the best in class, and we call them out because their performance is significantly greater across all the key metric areas. And then we try to deconstruct and understand, well, what are the things that are the defining characteristics of the best in class? What are the things that they do? What do they invest in? How do they go to market within their own enterprise? And rather than go again sort of point by point here, I think the key takeaway is that the best in class show what's possible, right? If you're struggling with costs that are $12, $15 per invoice on average, right, and that's an all-in cost, or if it's taking you almost 20 days to process your invoices, there is a path forward, right? You can say, oh, we'll never get to this point. That's not true. We have a full 20, 1 in 5 organizations are on average delivering metrics like this, right? Costs that are 78% lower, processing times that are 82% faster, invoice acceptance rates almost 60% lower, 50% more suppliers enabled, right? The list can go on and on. These are the key metrics that we start with. So what are the advantages that best in class have, right? They use technology, they adopt it, they have it in place, much more frequently. It doesn't necessarily jump out at you here. The green being the best in class, the blue being the other 80%. But not only do they have the solutions in place at a significantly higher degree, they're much better users of it. The volumes that they have on these solutions significantly higher, and it all then maps back to their better performance. But again, it's not just technology, right? You need to have the strategy, you need to have the staff in place, you have to have the direction from leaders in your organization, and that direction should be aligned with the direction of the larger business. All of these capabilities, again, just with the chart, it doesn't appear to be as dramatic, And even with the best-in-class performance being, at such a significantly better, better across all of those metrics, best-in-class still have some work to do too, right? They're not at 100% on these key capability areas. So again, even the top performers, have some opportunity left. And so we did want to spend, a little bit of time here for what I believe is contractually obligated in any webinar delivered by an industry analyst in 2024, and that's to talk a little bit about AI in AP, and that we really are in a new era. Now, I want to lead off with what report published a little bit earlier this year, but really for the first time in this industry, we have a view into how AI is being accessed and used today, right? And so, survey was March to May, and so at that point in time, we had 31% were using some level of AI capabilities as part of their AP operation. And, that I think that's a great baseline. What was really interesting and exciting, and really to sort of underline the importance of gaining an understanding of AI and what it can do for your organization, is the fact that another 45% have direct plans to be using AI by the end of the year, right? So then, this is AI, and we don't need to go into the full history lesson of what is AI and where is it, how is it defined, and how do you access it necessarily? But the point is that this is a relatively new and emerging capability, a technology innovation that's emerging within your AP automation and B2B payment solutions, and that we've never seen, right? So we've been doing research and working in this industry for about 25 years. We've never seen a new technology get this level of adoption this quickly, right? Excuse me. Right? So more than 75%, 76% are going to be using some type of AI within AP by the end of this year. Now, again, the report goes into a little bit more depth on, what is AI and how do you think about it. We're going to give you some of the highlights from that report here, because AI and its capabilities and what it can do is going to be a fast-moving target, right? The AI strengths clearly are automation, pattern and anomaly recognition, the ability to do statistical predictions, also, more broadly, content generation and analysis, right? You start to think of AI as being able to enhance what, you can do on your computer, what you can do, in your own head, and to really accelerate that with, just, massive computing power. At the same time, right, this is an emerging technology that is, one that sort of learns from its own usage. There are some limitations, right? The solutions are not, they don't rationalize, they don't think and act the way that an AP staffer would, that you and I would, and that's okay, right? The solutions are not at a point now where they can necessarily explain clearly, why the decisions, why the recommendations, why the results they have computed are what they are. And then, again, with large language models, right, there are, these sort of out of nowhere, they call them hallucinations, where, the answer given is not, doesn't make sense in the context of the prompt. Robert, I mean, AI, you work at a software and solutions and services company. AI has to be front and center. Tell us about.
Yeah, it's AI and accounts payables, it's super important. And I think what we recommend and what we've seen is, a lot of companies will really try to use AI to tackle very complex issues, but they don't really know their own metrics, right? So our recommendation is always to just start small, right? Get quick wins, be able to report on your metrics using, AI. Have really good AI reporting that tells you about your organization. How long does it take to process an invoice, exception percentage, things like that. we've seen companies really try to go after and tackle complex issues when they don't have key metrics in place. So that's what we'd recommend. We've been using AI quite a bit within Corcentric to really focus on big pain points, such as like invoice digitization. We've been leveraging OCR technology to digitize invoices and have moved towards AI. And that's just to improve, straight through processing rates, et cetera, which, reduces the risk of fraud, right? So it's really just focusing on key components within AP and not try to, solve the world, but just really focus on small tactical wins and then improve over time, right? As you get those wins and have good solid reporting on your metrics, then you can, go to the next complex issue and use AI to solve it.
Right. No. That's great. That's great. Right. So, right. I mean, I think the recommendation would be, right, that you should start small with your AI usage and understand the use cases and understand what's available in the marketplace. I want to stress and underline the importance of, it's really important that you understand what the underlying data, where that's coming from, how it's accessed. And there's a lot of other factors there, but just again, high level, AI can be a force multiplier for AP, right? AI drives and expands automation, right? To get to an intelligent AP operation, you need to automate a lot of the basic activities, the tactical tasks and activities, so the skilled resources can focus on more strategic things that technology can't do, right? And so that's the, take, shave time off here and there and get the incremental value that in sum adds up to something larger, and that's today, right? The expectation is that AI will continue to expand its capabilities and continue to grow. Analytics, data, and predictive, right? AI supports better decisions, right? This is where the world is going, and AP should be focused on getting there, right? For many years, we talked about an intelligent AP operation and said, we're going to become more data-driven. This is really before AI entered the conversation, entered the discourse. Now that it's here, right, we really do have an innovative technology that's going to propel this industry forward. AI systems can process data and do calculations that humans can't. It's a huge benefit, right? This is not a threat. The fear that AI is going to, replace you, is not, at least over the next decade, a reality. The reality is that, someone who understands how to use technology and how to leverage AI capabilities is much more of a threat to you if you, sort of eschew or ignore, this force in the marketplace. Improved user experience, right? By providing information and context to the user's activities. Think about the approval process where you have the occasional approver coming in and trying to review something. AI has the ability to help shape that experience and guide approvers through the entire process. I think it's important to understand, right, that AI and how you're going to access it within accounts payable is not something that you just go out and, oh, let's buy this type of AI and bring it in, right? AI is going to be the capabilities that are built within your AP automation solutions, within your B2B payment solutions, right? They're going to be purpose-built for AP. It's going to be able to aggregate data, across multiple customers in certain cases. And what it's really going to do is going to combine AP and AI expertise, right? I mean, this is, honestly, right, we're just at the jumping off point. And over the next couple of years, it's really going to be exciting, right? Right now, AI and AP is still emerging, right? We're about to launch a new series on Payables Place that really focuses on, the use cases and what organizations are doing. Use cases today are a little bit more narrow and highly targeted, right? Data quality remains an issue. Certainly governance, right? And we talked about this in the report, the importance of having governance in place to understand, what AI can and should be doing. What are the checkpoints, that you have so that you're using AI, effectively and making smart usage of this new and pretty exciting technology. AI has absolutely been overhyped. There will be a bust after this boom, but just like the internet, which experienced that same thing, right? At some point in the future, AI is going to pervade all of the enterprise technologies that you're using, right? There's a lot of investment in this. The capabilities, right? I mean, the thing that's really exciting is that the capabilities are growing and growing, at exponentially faster rates than what we've seen in other enterprise technologies. How to think about integrating AI into your operations, right? Sort of standard stuff here, right? Assess your readiness, try to understand and define what it is that you're trying to do. Focus on your data, focus on your data quality. This is why there's a need now to if you go back to that, what level of automation do you have across your key processes? You really need to focus on going that last mile or going that first mile for many of you. All these others, I think, fairly standard. And again, we go into depth in the report on AI. So where does that leave us? AP continues to be more strategic, right? But its pace has been slow. I think it has been accelerated in recent years. In the pandemic, where we're working with a distributed workforce, there was a need for automation. In the high cost of capital environment that's going to exist over at least the next 5 years, having inputs and having visibility into how and when you pay your suppliers, it becomes much more important. AP becomes much more important. Risk management, risk from a supplier relationship standpoint, risk from a fraud standpoint, all the key areas of risk, only seeming to increase. As we've seen, best in class continue to outperform across the full scope of AP activities. And finally, AI is coming. It becomes very important now for your team to start to think about, not everybody, but to assign members of your team to really build an expertise in this new technology, to understand use cases, to understand what different capabilities are available in the marketplace, to understand the roadmaps of your solution providers. And so, that brings us to the end. Here's our contact information. Ali, Robert, I've enjoyed the time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I
Andrew.
appreciate both of you guys, and thank you to the attendees. We will send this out via email, the recording, and if you have any questions, please email the contact on the screen. So thank you all, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.